I applied for my passport in January 2020 because I could say, okay, I could potentially see how things are going. I need to have a passport. I need to get the F out of Australia. Well, I actually didn't get my passport until June 2020. So by then, the international borders were closed down and I was locked in Australia until 2022.
All right, welcome to the We Are Satoshi podcast. Welcome to the YouTube channel. We're out here surrounded by YouTubers, Bitcoiners. The energy is high, and today I get the pleasure to speak with the one and only Luke Mikic. Luke, how are you, man?
I'm great, dude. Thank you so much for having me on. We're in the most beautiful city in the world, Prague. They call it Bitcoin City for a reason, okay? First Bitcoin conference was held here in Prague. I'm just pumped to be talking to you, brother.
Dude, the pleasure is all mine. We met in El Salvador, in Berlin, a couple months ago. You had an incredible presentation where you talked about your experience becoming a digital nomad. It's something that a lot of people aspire to do, and I'm curious to just pick your brain for the next 15-20 minutes while we're here in Prague, just about what that experience has been like, what you've learned along the way. So first of all, how did you land on this lifestyle? What were the actions or what were the events that transpired that led you to say, hey, I'm going to get on the road and build my life around this thing?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for the kind words about Berlin, El Salvador. I don't talk much on stage, but that was a blast and it was a pleasure meeting you. So yes, right now I'm a digital nomad. Might have traveled to about 40 cities in the past 2 years, something like 15 different countries. Now, only 2 years ago, I'd never left Australia. So I'd actually never traveled to any countries around the world. I might have only done 2 or 3 cities in Australia. So times have changed pretty quickly for me. And that is because 2020 was a massive inflection point for me personally. 2020 was an interesting year for a lot of people, actually. I think 2020 was a year where it caused a lot of people to reflect and think about things. And I think a lot of people were forced to make tough decisions and think about things that they'd never had to think about before in their life. So for me personally, I had a business in 2020 in Australia. I was a personal trainer. I fitted out my little home gym on the Gold Coast into a gym. I had clients, and I came to the conclusion very quickly that firstly, I predicted that medicine lockdowns would happen, that compulsory medication would be enforced on the population, and me as a business owner, I would potentially be forced to comply with that. So as soon as 2020 happened, maybe June or July, I closed my personal training physical business in Australia and I started looking for solutions out. So I applied for my passport and I also started looking for online jobs. So that is, I suppose, where the story began.
Okay, so how did you have a sense that things were going to go that direction? Because when COVID started, I remember I went to my boss and I said, man, this is going to be a 2-week media propaganda. They do this every couple of years. They try and instill some fear. They did it with Ebola. They did it with SARS. They did it with swine flu. This is going to just be another one of those. How did you know, or what were the signs that really were like, this is more serious?
So it all goes back to the money. And we know in 2020, well, we know all around the world today, the world is more indebted than ever before. And in 2019, the yield curve inverted. The yield curve has predicted every single recession in the past 50 years. The high level is that when the yield curve inverts, that means the smart money is positioning themselves and predicting a crisis. So this happened in 2019, and it predicted the recession would come in the next 6 to 12 months. In September 2019, the interest rates in the repo market blew up, which means the banking system essentially became insolvent, and the Federal Reserve was already printing hundreds of billions of dollars in September of 2019. So I knew that they needed a big excuse to print more money than they've ever printed before in human history, because each bailout you see actually looks bigger and bigger. So in 1998, we had interest rates lowered because of the whole long-term capital management blow-up. In 2008, they needed to lower interest rates as well as print like $700 billion in the TARP bailout. 2020 was even bigger. Globally, all around the world, the central banks printed about $10 trillion of capital in that 2020 and 2021 time era. So all I thought was, okay, the bailout, the banking system blow up is going to have to be bigger in 2020. They're going to have to need an excuse. And I thought that the lockdowns would be the perfect excuse for that.
You're more on the finger on the pulse than me, I'll tell you that. So you saw it coming. You started to reorient your life around the idea that you were going to need to be more nomadic. And then you were stuck in Australia for 2 years. What was that like? Talk to me about just the emotional state, especially being a second-class citizen. Were you not allowed in restaurants? Did you refuse to get a medical procedure? Kind of talk to me through that, because in the U.S. at least we had some. There's actually 30% of the U.S., 100 million people, refuse to get the jab. So I could find some people out there. But maybe in Australia, from my perspective, it's slightly different. You talk to me about, correct what I'm saying here. But what was that experience like, and how did you get out? And then I want to talk a little bit about actually the good stuff, which has been really building around Bitcoin, building your YouTube channel, all the good stuff there.
Yes, so in Australia, yes, I was a second-class citizen for 2 years. So I got kicked out of 4 different gyms because I refused to wear a face diaper. I refused the medicine mandates, so I wasn't allowed anywhere. It was very difficult to go grocery shopping every day. Maybe every 2 to 3 days I'd get kicked out of a grocery store, which meant I'd have to go to a different one and try to sneak in without scanning the stupid little barcodes, the QR codes that they have on the front of every single shop.
Unvaccinated could not go into grocery stores?
Couldn't go into grocery stores, restaurants, and I actually have many videos of me running around town ripping the QR codes off all of the restaurant buildings. Because for me, I'm someone who really likes to align myself with truth. Truth is a really big value for me. So if I don't believe in something, I'm going to openly say I do not believe in this, and I'm going to tell everyone around me that it's bullshit if they believe in it. So if I see stupid QR codes, I'm going to rip them down. If I'm told to wear a mask over a virus, which I think is bullshit, I'm not going to wear the mask. If I'm told that I need compulsory medicine for a virus, which I know that I do not need it for, I'm not going to do it. So again, all of this made life in Australia very difficult because everybody was so compliant in Australia. So essentially, you're right, I was trapped in Australia for 2 years. I applied for my passport in January 2020 because I could say, okay, I could potentially see how things are going. I need to have a passport. I need to get the F out of Australia. Well, I actually didn't get my passport until June 2020. So by then, the international borders were closed down and I was locked in Australia until 2022. So that is a little bit of my life in Australia, what it was like, and why I did decide to move out. And in those couple of years, I obviously closed the personal business, and I slowly began training myself and learning about how I would potentially make money online.
Okay, so then where does Bitcoin come into the equation? Were you a Bitcoiner before this? Did you find Bitcoin? Talk to me about your orange pilling story really quick. I'm curious.
Yeah, so high level was in 2017. I was at university studying a double major in maths and chem because I thought that is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I learned about Bitcoin one day in late 2017, bought it in 2018, and I was kind of like just learning about Bitcoin on the side. I learned so much about Bitcoin in a 3-week period where I was listening to Bitcoin podcasts for like 24 hours a day, literally. I was sleepless for about 3 weeks. I had a little bit of sleep, but not much, because I was listening to people like Max Kaiser and Andreas Antonopoulos before I went to bed every night. And this concept of Bitcoin was so fascinating, I just couldn't sleep. Anyway, I learned enough about Bitcoin in 3 weeks that I came to the realization that I wanted to drop out of university. And then that's when I created the personal training gym business. So the only reason I created the personal training gym business was because I had the training and the qualifications to do it. And I kind of like going to the gym. I'm still going to the gym today, even though I don't look like it stood next to you, mate.
If you're watching in person, this guy is fit.
Pianeta de Boya. So anyway, the gym. So the reason I started the gym was because I wanted to free up more time to learn about Bitcoin. But then I learned pretty quickly, hey, I can't have a physical job in Australia because ultimately, I love the gym. The gym's a passion of mine. It's great. I've put years worth of qualifications and money into this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, my values are my personal sovereignty. So I was Bitcoin before the whole 2020 lockdown thing happened. And then when I was looking at, just doing things online, it was just a natural first starting place for me, was just trying to educate other people about Bitcoin.
You mentioned sovereignty. It's a huge theme in my life and kind of an underlying through line of the show here is how do you live a more sovereign and free life? I wonder if you could describe what that looks like. We hear it at Bitcoin conferences, not your keys, not your coins, take ownership of your life and all these things, but like tactically, what were the things that you did? Was it a mindset shift? Was it actions that you took? Like, was it becoming a digital nomad? Like, what were kind of the steps there, and how do you think about actually being sovereign?
Yeah, so having true sovereignty is more than just having monetary sovereignty. Now, this is something that I learned through experience. I think it's something that even maybe 90% of Bitcoiners don't fully grasp. I know because I was in Australia. My monetary energy was extremely sovereign. Had all of my life savings in Bitcoin, had a multi-signature setup, had no Bitcoin on exchanges. All my passphrases and private keys punched into steel plates. Like, I'm as sovereign monetarily as possible. I'm not touching my Bitcoin for decades, right? So monetarily, I was very sovereign, but I was trapped in Australia for 2 years. So I wasn't really truly sovereign, because I believe sovereignty is multifaceted. You need to have different areas of sovereignty. You need to, one, have control over your monetary energy. So can a government steal your wealth? Okay, is your money in the bank? Can a government steal it? You're not sovereign. Even if you have your cash under your mattress, right? You are not sovereign, because the government can any day just print money and debase your savings that is underneath your mattress.
Or come and knock on the door and freaking take it.
Yeah, exactly. So, one, do you have monetary sovereignty? Two, the biggest second aspect of sovereignty, do you have sovereignty over your bodily autonomy? Can you control your environment? So in Australia, I didn't have sovereignty over my body. I couldn't travel internationally. I couldn't even travel interstate in Australia unless I had a special permission that would let me travel across the border for work, okay? Even in Australia, we had, during the lockdown period, you had a 5-kilometer radius around your home that you were not allowed to move outside of, okay? You could only leave your home for a 5-kilometer radius if you were going to the pharmacy for medicine or the grocery store for food, okay? So what is your personal sovereignty, okay? If you're in Canada or Australia or in New Zealand and you're locked down in your home, you are not sovereign, even if you have 100% of your net worth in Bitcoin, okay? So there's multiple aspects to sovereignty. That's two. I actually think there's a third as well. Do you control the money that you make, okay? If you can be fired from your job for saying something that the government doesn't like or your employer doesn't like, do you really have sovereignty over your income? So I think becoming sovereign is multifaceted. I think those are the three main aspects that I look at when determining, is someone sovereign or am I sovereign myself? Monetary sovereignty. Do you control your own monetary energy? Can a government or a bank steal your monetary energy when they want? Okay, pillar number one. Pillar number two, do you have sovereignty over your own body? Are you allowed to move where you want to go? Do you have to get an experimental medical injection to be able to move interstate in your country or move overseas? Yes or no? And then number three, can an employer fire you because they don't agree with your political identity, your political views, your opinion? Okay, again, I think this is why I love America. I talk a lot of shit about America, but America is still the most free country in the world because they have a little bit of free speech, okay? You might have a court system that actually defends free speech a little bit. So it's a long answer for explaining what is sovereignty, but those are the kind of three pillars that I think about in regards to sovereignty.
That's a fantastic answer, and obviously very well thought through. Now what are you doing? Like how did you get to that? Especially on number three, I'm curious. Like you left, you had the physical fitness business, the personal training business, but now what are you doing? Are you talk to me a little bit about what the day-to-day looks like, and also shill your YouTube channel because it's awesome. And this guy just interviewed Michael Saylor. I'm interviewing him, so I mean, by extension, I'm kind of interviewing Michael Saylor right now. So, what's the day-to-day like these days, man?
Yeah, so again, multiple different YouTube channels. I have so how do I actually satisfy that third pillar of making sure that an employer doesn't actually control me, okay, and control my revenue stream? So I think today we're actually living in a modern day renaissance, okay? The last renaissance we lived through was 400 years ago in the 1600s. And I think today the education system is fundamentally flawed because they're trying to teach people to become a specialist. They're saying, go and spend 5 years, become an engineer, or spend 7 years, become a doctor, okay? And you're going to do that for the rest of your life because we are sure that technology is not going to change. We are the government, we are God, and we know that the past 100 years or 400 years of economic data and political data where we have had governments and nation states will be the same for the next 400 years, okay? So we're going to train you to be specialists, and I think that's wrong for the digital age. Today, we're living in a digital environment. Things are changing faster than they've ever changed before in history. And I actually think it's a better idea for somebody to be a generalist, okay? So they need to learn to make money online, but you need to actually stack your skills and become proficient in lots of these different disciplines, okay? So again, what is a generalist? What is a specialist? A specialist is someone who spends 2 decades learning to be a brain surgeon, a neurosurgeon. They spend 14 hours a day learning to be the best brain surgeon in the world. That's a specialist, okay? A generalist is someone who maybe spends 3 hours a day for 3 years learning as much as they can about videography, like you have, right? You're essentially a specialist in videography, but so that's a poor example.
I'm a generalist, man.
Definitely not.
I'm not an expert in anything, so I got to be a generalist, you know. But I love it. Thank you.
Far too humble. You're an incredible filmmaker. Anyone who needs films, check out Kyle. But again, I think so. Being a generalist is someone who gets 80% of the proficiency or 80% of the expertise in a specific field, and then they move on. Instead of spending another 20,000 hours trying to learn how to become a specialist in that area, they move on, they learn a new skill, and they stack those skills. So for me personally, I already had an obsession with Bitcoin before I started to think about making money online. And now again, so I know about Bitcoin. I've always been a good talker, I suppose. I mean, let's reframe that. Not a good talker. I can talk about people. I can talk to people for hours if it's about a topic I'm passionate about. Yep. So again, a way that I've somehow made money online is I like talking about things. I suppose I'm naturally an extroverted person, and I like Bitcoin. So I've just kind of tried to develop these skills and stack these skills over the past few years. And, I write a lot about Bitcoin online. I was trained to do a lot of writing when I worked for people like Mark Moss. So really the past 4 years, I've just tried to learn as much as I can from actual experts in the space and stack my skills.
That's crazy. Wait, did I know you work for Mark Moss? Because have we talked about this?
Maybe not.
My first podcast on We Are Satoshi was with Austin Herbert, who also worked for Mark. What a crazy coincidence there. What'd you learn from Mark?
So I worked with him for 2 years. It was the first online job I ever got. And Mark taught me absolutely everything I know today. He taught me how to write emails. I wrote a lot of the scripts for his YouTube videos.
Dude, emails is like maybe the most important skill, period. Like if you can write a good email, organize your thoughts and communicate. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, keep going.
No, don't be sorry. It's a great point to add.
I just had to,
Yeah, copywriting in the digital age is a massive skill that somebody should really look into. Yeah. But again, don't stop at copywriting, like stack your skills. Yeah. So Mark taught me how to write Twitter threads, how to make viral YouTube videos, how to hook someone with YouTube videos, what's the perfect title and thumbnail combination to create curiosity on YouTube. Okay, this dude's a master. He's got 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, just recently ticked over that milestone. Congrats, Mark, if you're somehow watching this video. I am forever grateful for everything you've taught me. So yeah, I worked for Mark for 2 years. He taught me absolutely everything he knows, and he's obviously brilliant in all sorts of different aspects, not only in marketing and media and Bitcoin, but also business and life. So yeah, it was a phenomenal opportunity for myself.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, it's just such a small world. Mm-hmm. And he just wrote a book called The Uncommunist Manifesto with Alexander Svedski, which is going to transition us perfectly to the next question, which is Satlantis. So you're wearing the Satlantis shirt. There it is. We've been hanging out at this Bitcoin conference. There's so many amazing businesses on the front edge of what is likely going to be the future of the internet, which is Nostr. Some people would say Nostr won't scale or Nostr is still so early, but you have true visionaries in this space that are looking 10 years down the road with a long time preference. They don't care if it doesn't work in 6 months. They're truly thinking for the long term. So talk about what Satlantis is. Give us a brief what is Nostr, because people that I know that may watch this probably never have heard of Nostr before. They might think it's Twitter for Bitcoin or something like that. But what? And then secondly, first explain what it is, and then secondly, why are you involved with it, and how does it align with your goals and where you want to take your own career?
Okay, so the simplest explanation of Nostr that I can give. Now again, caveat, not a technical expert, but Nostr solves one of the biggest problems with social media today. So in social media today, you rent each platform that you use, okay? So if you have 100 Facebook friends, you've got 100 friends, you've got a ton of connections, a lot of history in your chats, right? But you're renting that account. Facebook can at any day say, okay, Luke, I don't like your political views or something that you posted on Facebook. I'm gonna delete your account, and it's gone. Okay, same with Instagram, same with YouTube. You're renting those accounts, okay? And people like me and Luke Broyles, who's behind the camera over there, with producer Pam, like we've spent years building our YouTube channels up, okay? We've put thousands of dollars and thousands of hours into building up these subscribers and connections and views online that we're slowly turning into a living, okay? But YouTube could at any point turn us off the internet.
Let's go.
We have our friends with us. Man, you should.
We're still here. The parents don't love us, but the kids do.
Yeah. Did you guys have a good dinner? That's amazing. Have a good night. Okay, so that is how social media works today. You rent your followers and you can be kicked off any platform at any time. Nostr is different. Nostr is very, very interesting because we're not going to get into the specifics, but essentially, once you have those 100 followers or 100 connections on Nostr, you could never really get kicked off the platform, okay? You could get kicked off a specific application, but you could take your private key and your public key that you get on Nostr. Again, we're not going to get into the technical weeds. We don't want to confuse you guys. Just like a login and a password. You can take your login and your password, plug it into a new application, and your 100 followers and 100 connections are still going to be there. So Nostr is like this decentralized, immutable social media network that people can come and use, and there's going to be no censorship, and they can come and build a following, and they can build connections with other people, and they're never going to lose those connections. I think that's a simple explanation of Nostr.
Very well said. The thing that I'll add too is, you know, they say when you're running a business or trying to build a following, an email is much more valuable than a Twitter follower or an Instagram follower. My understanding is that Nostr, you own your social graph. So it's like having an email list that you can take with you to any platform. So Satlantis is a platform built on top of Nostr where you can have one sign-in, one login, instead of have 45 logins and you've got LastPass and you lose your password, you have to reset it. If one of your accounts gets hacked, then maybe you lose access to your YouTube, which is your living and life. You can have one just for all these different platforms, which is a beautiful thing. You can have 100 followers on Primal, which is the Twitter version for Nostr, and you log into Satlantis and you have 100 followers on Satlantis. So it's almost a paradigm shift when we think about social media. And I think social media itself, it's a good experiment, and I think it's brought a lot of good to the world. But at this point, the vast majority of people that I talk to are somewhat disenchanted with it. They have a love-hate relationship with it. And the way people are talking about Nostr and building on Nostr is like just fundamentally different. So what is Satlantis then? This is the last question. So, and maybe we get a part 2 somewhere else, but what is Satlantis and how does it work, and what are you specifically doing with them?
Yeah, so Satlantis is essentially an application that every single digital nomad will be using in the future, okay? If you're traveling to a new city, I believe that Satlantis is going to be your one-stop destination, your one application that you use to organize everything. And this is very different to how travel works today. The way travel works today is you have to use Google, you have to use Google Maps, you have to use Google Reviews, you have to go to Instagram, you have to go to WhatsApp to coordinate a reservation at a hotel, Airbnb, or restaurant. Sometimes you go to Telegram, sometimes you go to Facebook groups to find like a group chat of other digital nomads who's in that city or the place you're going to. It is an absolute mess trying to travel as a digital nomad. Now, Satlantis is aiming to be the one-stop shop by pulling all of this into a one application, okay? This application is going to show you all of these different popular nomading spots around the world. It's going to have city pages, and on that city page for, let's take Prague as an example. We're in Prague today. It's beautiful, amazing architecture around. Now, if you go onto the city page of Prague on Satlantis, you're going to find all of the restaurants in the area on a map, just like Google Maps. We pull all of the data from Google Maps and we house it on Satlantis. You're also going to see all of the merchants who accept Bitcoin. You're also going to see a review for the city. You're going to see how expensive it is. You're going to see whether it's, safe. You're going to see, what is the architecture like. It's very similar to Nomad List in that respect. Okay, it's going to give you a lot of data about the overall city. You're also going to have group chats, again, in Satlantis. You're going to be able to find group chats of people in Satlantis. You're also going to actually be able to see like a merchant page. So each merchant that's in the city, if they use Satlantis, you're going to be able to see all of the images of all of their food that they post. So it's just like Instagram in that respect. Yeah. So Satlantis is like all of these different applications, but it's essentially brought into the one application. It's going to be a mega or a super application for digital nomads.
If you go on Google and you look at the reviews, how do you know those reviews are real? How do you know that the company didn't just buy or pay off TripAdvisor to get a good rating on the app? Like, we've all had that experience where we go somewhere, it's got a good rating, good reviews, and you show up and it's a complete disaster because they've literally paid their way to get to the top of the feed. Satlantis, you will see people that making reviews, so you have a level of trust. Oh my goodness, we got some action.
Police.
We got some action. Well, anyways, producer Pam behind the camera has been awesome. We also were just at the Satlantis brunch where Alexander Svetsky, Rob, the CTO, and a bunch of other 100 or more Bitcoiners. Just the level of excitement and energy around it is super, super huge. And probably anyone listening to this is the first time they've heard of Satlantis. Won't be the last. And so, Luke, thank you so much for sharing a little bit with me, man.
Thank you so much for having me, dude,
in
potentially the most gorgeous location for a chat.
This is special. Thank you very much.
Thank you.